Right
Oh,
on.
cool. And so while we're figuring out if we're connected on YouTube, it's been a great couple days, hasn't it?
Sure has.
It has been, yeah, both for the markets and like privacy coins have done really well over the past couple of days. I'm sure the entire Zcash ecosystem is super stoked.
Flying, Pirate Chain.
Monero's kind of caught up. Pirate Chain has done really well, at least today it has. So it's a good time to be into privacy, good time to be in crypto.
Yeah, no, I mean, when things start going up, I start to feel my face melt, and I'm like, I hope I have my positions ready.
Yeah, and of course, when that starts happening, then we start getting the calls, and
Oh, yeah.
users start, digging us with a lot of the questions on every little thing that could go wrong will, because you have just way more people using crypto, using our app and other apps as well. And of course, blockchains can also get overloaded.
Oh, yeah.
That happens as well. Yep. All right. Well, what's on the agenda for today, Daniel?
The agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about confidential layer, Bridgeless, and Zano.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, for
history of
those that are
privacy.
online, if people have any questions, definitely feel free to fire it off. Let us know whether or not there's any questions coming down, where we can kind of talk about what made us excited. I know, Daniel, you were one of the first on the team to start researching Bridgeless and confidential layer before we integrated into Edge. Maybe you
Yeah.
can give us an idea of what the experience was like and what does it actually provide? Like, what exactly is the product doing?
Right, okay. So it started off when I caught that what was it, the Roger Ver and Tucker Carlson. They were talking about confidential layer being this trustless bridge into privacy for my Bitcoin and other blue chips. And I was like, that was like, wow, that was the narrative, that was,
Right.
okay, trustless bridging into privacy. That is something that's been missing from the crypto world. So yeah, I started poking around and just seeing what's going on there, and tried to bridge some Bitcoin over, and kind of a tough experience.
Right.
But,
It usually is when something just first launches, especially when the tools that you're using to do some operation are built by the protocol developers, right? Because confidential layer is a protocol, Bridgeless is a protocol, and then as low-level protocol developers, they're like trying to build a UI so that at least the early adopters can use it, but it's usually not that friendly, right? And this is true of even as far back as Bitcoin. The earliest users of Bitcoin had to run a full node, could only send money through a command line interface. Right? Like you wrote command line arguments to be able to send money to an address. At the time it was an address, it was a public key. And then of course that advanced, that got better, a user interface got built, mobile apps got built, web apps got built, that allowed us to do all those operations. And of course, similar happens with Bridgeless. Right?
Yeah, that accessibility factor slowly gets more accessible as more developers come and build front ends. Is that kind of?
Exactly, and we're a front end to all these protocols. So we built a front end to be able to access Bridgeless, confidential layer, to be able to bridge that Bitcoin into BTCX.
Which is a smooth process.
Yeah, exactly, and that's our goal. We're not protocol developers. We're not going to be able to build this next gen, fast, private chain. Well, not that we can't. It's not our focus though, at least not yet.
Okay.
We're a small team focused on building that interface to all the blockchains. And so when you did this kind of bridging operation, what was the experience like? What did you end up with, and what can you do with the results of the bridging operation? What did you do?
Yeah, very good question. So, I ended up having to transfer, I believe, some Bitcoin into a very special type of wallet that they put out, so that it would allow me to then send the correct bridge command.
Okay.
But I ended up leaving a little bit of dust in that wallet, and I didn't like leaving dust behind.
Yeah, a lot of people don't, especially when dust can, one day it's dust, another day, it's an entire giant piece of furniture in your house.
Yeah, it's a
so
little
it
bit
grows.
It keeps, it's the background of your mind. You're thinking about it.
Yep.
Relative to the edge swipe and it's done experience, it was definitely a little more choppy.
Okay.
But once I did get the Bitcoin into Bitcoin X on Zano, that was fun. I was like, okay, now I have some private Bitcoin that I can send around very cheaply to anybody else with a Zano address. Use cases, if a couple times around the office, I think paying for coworker back for lunch, send them some Bitcoin X.
Nice. Send the BTCX over to people.
It's still early.
Yeah, and it's got that untraceable nature, just like Zano. So that's what I think a lot of people are excited about. Bitcoin's never really had good privacy.
Yeah.
It's had, I like to call it duct tape privacy, where, well, it has this hole, let's like slap some tape on it, hope it holds. It has another hole, slap some tape on it, hope it holds. Like a lot of the coin mixing is like that. I think that's been the primary extent of Bitcoin's privacy is on one side coin mixing, coin join, pay join, PayJoin V2, which came out, which improved it a little bit, but still it's just mixing at the end of the day. And on the other side, stealth addresses, where you hide who receives the money, but at the cost of having to scan the blockchain like privacy coins. So you get kind of like duct tape privacy, but with a poor user experience, and also poor network adoption. And so admittedly, Zano also is still fairly small compared to Bitcoin. So not many people are going to have a Zano wallet yet. If they're a Bitcoiner especially, because they're so alienated by anything other than Bitcoin. But once they do have a Zano wallet, Edge being one great option, of course, maybe I'm a little biased, but once they do, there's no question of like, well, do you support PayJoin, or do you support stealth addresses, and do you support, is it V2 PayJoin?
It's just working.
It just works. Once you have Zano to Zano, it's just a token, it just works. And
Privacy.
So, exactly, and you get the full privacy. And so I think it's currently the best solution for Bitcoin privacy today. I just can't think of a better one at this point in time. And you do have to bridge over, and I think the minimum is still kind of high, in the order of like, what, $500+?
Yeah, it'll get reduced, I believe.
Well, the price of Bitcoin went up, so it might be a little bit higher now, maybe closer to $600. But it will get reduced. I think it might already be, but we've got to update the app, Edge, in order to support the lower amounts.
Okay. And I know you also have an interest in Bitcoin X as a form of paying others, so you don't necessarily have to see all of how people are spending their money.
I mean, I'm interested in crypto being used for payments at all.
Practical.
Right? But using it for payments means that you do have to have a level of financial privacy that maybe people that just kind of buy and hold, and just invest in it, for a long term, maybe don't see the same amount of value in.
Okay.
Especially if you're investing in it through a third party, the ETFs, centralized exchanges, then for sure you don't care about privacy because you don't have any in that sense. It's full KYC Bitcoin. Once you're transacting it, you start to care. And that's where I think BTCX really comes in. And of course, it just starts with BTCX. We can do ETH and many others in the future.
So do you think we're going to see, or need to see, more pain points from transparent blockchains before this gets more adoption? Or is it going to be mandated? Or?
Yeah, so seeing pain points is interesting. Like the pain point for one is not necessarily a pain point for another. So like when it comes to privacy, a lot of people don't see the pain point until they're hit with it in some way, shape, and form. They're like, oh gosh, yeah, I did say that at one point in time, and I didn't realize that was on my SMS, and now it's being used against me, right? Because SMS and email are just about like almost fully public to the companies that you use. But those few of us that do care tremendously about privacy either have or know people that have gotten hit with kind of that privacy pain point. And so does it have to become more widespread, the pain point, before people adopt? Yeah. To some degree, yes, but I'm going to hope that they adopt because the tools just are private. So there's going to be some class of users that, yes, they adopt because they or a friend or a family member get hit with those pain points. And then another class of users, which I hope is the vast majority, adopt because the tools just happen to implement it,
right,
and they don't even realize they're getting it.
I can see that.
And so that's kind of my hope, that we don't have to hit those problems first.
Yeah, because some of the community and industry leaders are saying this is necessary for money, and so this is
important enough for money. For those that saw recently, I think it was just yesterday or 2 days ago, Naval Ravikant, big investor, entrepreneur, very well known in Silicon Valley, although I don't know where he's actually located at this point, had really promoted Zcash. He had mentioned that Bitcoin is kind of like insurance against the dollar, but then Zcash is insurance against Bitcoin and Bitcoin's transparency, right? In case the transparency of Bitcoin becomes a critical flaw, well, your insurance is Zcash.
Interesting.
And in the same sense that Bitcoin is insurance against the dollar and hyperinflation of the dollar, typically speaking, or insurance against the dollar censorship through traditional payment means, then you hold Bitcoin, right? But Zcash is that next level. Now, he was talking about Zcash. Personally, I think a number of coins have done a great job.
Privacy-wise.
Privacy-wise, Zcash has led the pack in technology, although not quite in adoption or privacy by default. So each has their own strengths and weaknesses. We're a fan of Zcash. We've supported it since as early as you could support private Zcash. But I've also supported Monero, big fan of that as well.
And these are all tough chains to support, right? It's not.
They are hard, yes. Every time I mention to our engineering team, we're about to put on the roadmap support for this new privacy chain. You can see the, oh gosh, here we go, here goes some pain. They are definitely tough to support. So they're few and far between. We might be supporting dozens of chains now, but only 4 privacy chains out of dozens. I'd love to support dozens of privacy chains, but man, is it a ton of work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Each having their own hurdles and challenges for how they are exactly implementing the technology.
Yeah, they require a lot more low-level code, and for the cryptography, the complex cryptography that they implement isn't a straightforward application-level code. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit more challenging. It's hard to keep it maintained as well. We're far more dependent on large libraries to handle this complex cryptography versus other blockchains where the libraries are a little bit smaller, thinner. There's just less code needed because it's easier to craft a transaction that is a transparent chain. And it's also far easier to find your transaction on a transparent chain. You practically don't need any third-party code, right? You can easily, any developer worth their salt can write code that can detect the transaction on a transparent chain, right?
Yeah.
But being able to detect the transaction on a private chain is almost over the head of any average developer unless you work in cryptography or work on, privacy protocols like a Monero or Zcash. That's just over your, I don't call it pay grade, but way past what you've studied and done in the past.
You could say it's a big value add that we're supporting privacy coins.
Yeah, it's a big value because it's a lot of effort.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort. But yeah, we're happy to get this one live, and I want to try to drive some adoption through like what we, talking about this on social media. Hope to go to some events and really promote the use of BTCX, even to the Bitcoiners. And there's a Bitcoin meetup group here in San Diego, and they're pretty staunch Bitcoin, promoters, advocates, and I'm like, all right, I'll still mention Zano and BTCX, and of course they have a bunch of questions. Okay. But one actually asked me to say, hey, can you give a demo on this at a meetup? And I'm like, well, I could if the Bitcoiners are open to it, to show people how to like bridge it over to BTCX and be able to send it fast and cheap and bring it back into Bitcoin as you need. Happy to do that. I'll see if they end up taking me up on that offer. But I think this is an important piece of tech that the Bitcoin community specifically needs to be open to, and not be so closed-minded and say, oh God, there's this token called Zano. I don't want to deal with it. I'm automatically shutting myself off to the technology because there's this token that has, anything to do with something other than Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. And another logical argument would be, bridge risk. If I bridge my Bitcoin, my real Bitcoin over to this new blockchain, do I have, is there any
That's absolutely. There's no, it's not a zero risk thing. Well, holding Bitcoin is not zero risk. Holding dollars is not zero risk.
True.
But for sure, you are adding more attack vectors once you're holding a coin on a different network. That's true of wrapped Bitcoin. That is true of BTCX. It's true of Lightning. Right. So Lightning is not risk-free, and hence almost every Bitcoiner will tell you, well, don't hold all your money in a Lightning channel, right? Just put a little bit for you to transact and make little payments. I'm like, all right, sure. That's a great way for us to start using BTCX, right? Put a small amount into, it's not a channel, you're just transferring it to BTCX, and then send and receive that to people as a way of making payments. Like, I'd love to see a merchant processor start accepting it, the BitPays of the world. And then you put a few $100s in there, and you pay for a few things. And then over time, you start to see, does the ecosystem, has it matured and proven itself as being stable and safe and secure? And only time will tell, so obviously you don't rush into a ton of money into it. And yeah, as it starts to mature, then we can start using it for larger payments, larger holdings.
And is the idea of it being a trustless bridge actually help, I guess, maybe lend a little bit more authority or credibility to the fact that it's, I can trust this because I don't have to trust a counterparty necessarily?
Well, yeah, so trustless is always a challenging word. It's the question of how many people do you have to trust? What's their motivation to break that trust? How hard is it for them to break that trust? Do they have to coordinate with multiple parties, or can one person do it? And so the architecture of Bridgeless is what you'd call much more distributed, meaning that anybody, whoever's listening, can go run a validator node and contribute to validating, locking, and minting BTCX and other tokens, and becoming this bridge validator. And over time, the hope is that there's enough transactions and there's enough fees through the transactions. They'll motivate more validators, and the more validators there are, the more trustless the system becomes, because hopefully no one individual entity owns enough validators to compromise that trust, right? And people forget that there's a difference between the distributed or decentralized nature of a network and the distributed decentralized nature of a protocol, right? Some protocols are inherently centralized. So some protocols say, well, in order for you to be a validator, we as in a company that builds a protocol have to whitelist you. And then say there's 20 validators, but all of them have been whitelisted by one central entity, and that's actually in the protocol. So a protocol like that is inherently much more kind of centralizing than one where anybody can join, right? So that's protocol level decentralization, centralization or decentralization. Now, the state of the network is a different thing. So you can make a protocol where anyone can join, right? But there's only one person in it. That's Bitcoin on day one. So Bitcoin on day one was very centralized. It was only Satoshi mining. He was the only validator, he was the only node, she, whoever. And that was it. Now, over time, more validators came in, or miners, miners and nodes came in, and the network became more and more distributed, more decentralized over time, because the protocol lets it be that way. And I think that's similar to the state of early chains, and I'm sure Bridgeless is like this, where there's not many validators of different entities, but as it grows, more people are motivated to come in.
Open source, permissionless kind of.
It's permissionless. So I think the key is that the protocol is permissionless, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners will really sling mud at protocols for being centralized, but not centralized because they were designed that way. Centralized because they're early, and so there's not many people running nodes, and they forget their own history, that Bitcoin started the same way. It started off very centralized. So you can't sling mud at a protocol for being centralized when the state of the network is that way, but the protocol allows it to become much more distributed. It's permissionless to join and be a validator or be a miner, but they all start off very centralized. That's just the nature of the beast.
Okay, so seeing that trajectory and if it can open up versus if it's going to stay centralized.
Yeah, and some protocols, they effectively stay centralized in a major way, whereas things like Bridgeless, Bitcoin, Ethereum actually open themselves up to be much more permissionless, and anybody can be a validator, thereby giving us a much more distributed and more trustless aspect to security.
Okay.
But yeah, in the meantime, yes, please, anyone out there who's, I really would love to hear from and get the pure play Bitcoiners, like the people that are really, really pure Bitcoin, to see what they like or dislike about being able to use a BTCX, and hear their criticisms, because they're obviously the toughest critics when it comes to anything else that's not Bitcoin or Lightning, like Bitcoin L1 or Lightning, like they just eschew everything else. But I'd love to hear from those type of people and really get into a little debate, ask me some questions, express your concerns, and then see where we can address them and get more people using the protocol.
Okay, so you're kind of positioning or seeing this as a Lightning network
alternative, a great alternative, right? It gives you better privacy than the Lightning network. It's way more usable. It's also fast and cheap. One of the biggest differences between using an actual other chain for payments versus Lightning network is that you can send and receive BTCX, right? Like such as on Zano, without ever having BTC on the L1. All right, you don't need L1 Bitcoin in order to send and receive. So if I wanted to onboard my entire family to Bitcoin, I can send them BTCX, and they don't even have to ever have a Bitcoin wallet. Okay. Right? They never have to have a Bitcoin private key, a different Bitcoin public address, nothing. I can just directly send them BTCX. Sure, they'll have to acquire a little bit of Zano, like a really small amount of Zano, like $5 will go a long way, but they don't have to deal with opening, closing channels, having liquidity in a channel. That's all the stuff that Lightning introduces. That's definitely much more complicated. It can be overcome, but it doesn't have a good analogy in the real world of sending and receiving money. And so a lot of people are just not used to those challenges. But with Zano, it's just send and receive your BTCX, just like you would send and receive your Bitcoin. And that's a major difference between Lightning and all these other chains.
Yeah.
We lost a little light here. What happened? It went dark. Oh no.
Nah, I mean, I can also tell you just that the Lightning Network, in my experience, has been tough because of sending to another Lightning
lights.
address.
Why are we not using those lights? All right, maybe we can flip those off. Who likes, like fluorescent are always kind of ugly anyway, right? We'll try to tweak the lighting on here while we're going through this X spaces.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I was just curious, or I was mentioning how with sending Bitcoin X on Zano, I can use Zano aliases, and it's even easier than Bitcoin or
That you
easier
can.
than Lightning.
Aliases, I think, are pretty widely adopted across, unfortunately, different protocols, though. So Zano's got their aliases. ETH has got, ETH domains, and of course we're big fans of FIO,
Right.
which crosses, which spans across multiple chains, and so you can put your Zano address in. Well, can you? I know Zano addresses are quite large, so maybe those may or may not fit in the FIO. We have to check those.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we've checked that yet, but otherwise, it's a great experience. I think the aliases are what I call it's a nugget. That to me is not what's so compelling about Zano, right? Because the aliases, like the compelling part of Zano is its privacy and privacy for tokens, but aliases can never be private, right? The mapping of an alias to an address has to be public for people to find it. So therefore, there's not a big advantage to the aliases even existing.
Okay, I just didn't like messing with Lightning Network invoices. Those were never fun.
Turn off this projector. We got blue lights. No, hit that. There we go. Yeah.
I'm blue.
Okay, we'll improve our production quality next week, next time, all right?
Get some better
Because this
lighting.
looks like, I hate to say it, this looks like garbage.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Not
yeah.
cool.
So for sure, we will keep trying to promote a lot of these private alternatives, and we'll see where this takes us. I know I'm looking forward to fixing up our operations and getting paid in BTCX.
That would be sweet.
Right, so that way I start off with a private asset. Of course, I'll probably have to bridge it back into regular Bitcoin in order for me to use a lot of the existing rails and swaps. But maybe over time, I might not have to for all of it.
That's the goal, right?
That is kind of the goal, yeah.
Now, is it in the roadmap to support the other assets, ETH, X, the other blue chips?
Yeah, so one of the little nuggets of maybe technical detail that some of you listening might understand, I try not to go over the head of a lot of people. One of the reasons we're restricted to Bitcoin right now is Bridgeless supports the ability to bridge back and forth between Bitcoin and BTCX using one on-chain transaction. Okay. So when you want to go from Bitcoin to BTCX, you send one special Bitcoin transaction with some data in the op return, which is the memo field, right? The memo field of Bitcoin. And you don't need to sign and create another transaction after that.
Okay.
Right? There is a weird thing that we do need to do, but it doesn't require the private key of the user. We kind of have to poke the chain to just say withdraw the money into BTCX and vice versa. When you go to BTCX to Bitcoin, you just have to create one Zano transaction and you send the BTCX out. And then after confirmation, a little poke. Someone has to poke the chain to almost remind it, hey, can you bridge out the Bitcoin?
Okay.
But that doesn't require a private key. It doesn't require signatures. It just requires almost a little API call. And so we're able to support that because for us, that user experience that you were so critical of,
yeah.
you were so critical of the user experience when you use the web interface, the confidential layer, bridgeless interface that the protocol developers built. It works, but it requires multiple steps. It's a little bit cumbersome. Well, we want to eliminate the cumbersome, but that part of eliminating the cumbersome is not integrating things that we can't fix.
Okay.
So I mentioned how it's only one transaction for Bitcoin to BTCX, one transaction for BTCX back to Bitcoin, but for ETH it's two transactions. And they can't be done back to back.
Okay.
So if we could do them back to back, then great. It's in one sitting, you're in front of Edge, and you want to bridge, and we could hide the fact that there's two transactions, we just send them both.
Right.
We do this already today for some DEX operations that require a token approval and then the actual swap. If you were using a MetaMask connected to a Uniswap, you would literally see both operations. You'd have to approve both operations. Well, we hide that and we do it in one. But for bridging ETH, it's actually 2 operations necessary, and you have to wait for one to have a certain number of confirmations,
Before.
which by then the user might not even be an edge. They might have like swiped, slid to
Moved on.
confirm,
Right.
and they got to do something else. And in order for us to build the UI to say, oh, there's another transaction you have to make, show them a bunch of the quote unquote partially done transactions, and then create this new transaction for them to withdraw the funds from the bridge,
Okay.
is both a UX that is cumbersome, ugly, that we don't want to support.
Okay.
Also is a new UI that doesn't exist in the app, right? That kind of interface doesn't currently exist in the app. And also knowing that on the roadmap is moving towards a single transaction interface.
Okay.
After we gave feedback to the protocol developers, they're like, yeah, we can do it,
Awesome.
right? So like, okay, well, let's do it then. And so once that's changed in the protocol where we can do a single transaction for ETH and other assets, then absolutely we're going to support it, because we'd love for people to be able to send private ETH.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yep.
And this whole Bridges blockchain it seems like it's still very new,
It
nascent.
is. It's definitely new. So at least the adoption level is relatively new. I think it's been around for a little while, right? But its use as a bridge for privacy-based chains, like I know Firo is working on an integration as well.
Oh, cool.
That I think is what's kind of sparked a bit of a fire of interest for Bridgeless and confidential layers. So yeah, no, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of room for growth and building, and I'm kind of excited to see how the future plays out here.
We are too, so hopefully people give it a try. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know what you run into or what you want to see that's similar to it. We'd love to get feedback from users, because like I say over and over again, we don't know what people are running into, and especially this Bridgeless, we have zero understanding of like how many people are using it and how much they're sending over the bridge. It's all pretty private. Obviously the Bitcoin side isn't, but we don't know necessarily that that's like Edge specifically or someone else, or just general bridge traffic.
Got it.
And one thing about bridges too, the more people that use it, the more private it gets. So right now, I mean, you can imagine the day one that BTCX launched with Bridgeless. There's probably not a lot of transactions on it. And so if you bridged into Bridgeless and bridged out, and you're the only one, you know that it was you, right? A lot of people know that it was this one person that probably bridged out. As more traffic goes to the network, the more that traffic gets obfuscated between Bitcoin going in from one person, Bitcoin coming out from another. You just, generally speaking, get much more privacy. So that's another reason why I want to promote it and get people using it, even people that don't really care about privacy. If I can send all of my family BTCX, right, and all my friends, and they at their own discretion, because they need to, I'm like, oh, I need to send BTC L1 mainnet, and so they bridge out. That traffic on the bridge obfuscates the traffic for other people.
Helps the whole network.
It helps the whole network's level of privacy. Also inside the Zano blockchain, by having more transactions in the Zano blockchain, people sending BTCX versus people just sending Zano, that actually provides more privacy, because you can't tell what you're sending. So that was the one nice little nugget that I recently learned after we integrated BTCX, is that tokens on Zano are indistinguishable, that a transaction is indistinguishable between like a regular Zano transaction, a BTCX transaction, an ETHX transaction. They all look the same.
I can't see which assets are transferred.
You can't see which assets. I knew that you couldn't see the amounts, you can't see the sender, and you can't see the recipient, but you also can't see which asset. Obviously, if Zano didn't support tokens, you know the asset.
Right.
Right, Monero, you know the asset, right? It's XMR. By introducing tokens into the network, you actually don't know the asset. You don't know what was transferred. So it's like, almost like an extra layer of privacy that you get the more assets are on the network and the more people transact different assets.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, no, very excited about it. Yep, cool. So,
Excellent.
yep, we're on the spaces. If anyone fires off and has any question, I'm not sure
We
where
actually
to
we
check.
have one question, if you guys
Sure.
are ready,
Sure.
from Queen Tatiana.
Oh, hey Tatiana, how are you doing today? Nice seeing you, or
So I'll
virtually.
just read it out. So she tuned in a little bit late, but something like chain analysis tracks those Zano transactions. She wants to know if chain analysis can track those Zano transactions. How would that work? It would see your Bitcoin initially, but then it would go into Zano and look like what?
All right,
Just
so
a pair of BTC.
Yeah, so Chainalysis can definitely see Bitcoin going into the vault of Bridgeless that gets locked up. But after that, it can't see where that Bitcoin goes, right? It may be able to do a timing attack, or it can say, oh look, some Bitcoin went in and we know that this vault is the Zano address. It's really easy to tell what the Bridgeless, not Zano address, what the Bridgeless side of the vault is for Bitcoin, right? And you can see a whole bunch of Bitcoin enter this one or a few different addresses. And then roughly some amount of time later, a Zano transaction occurs. But you can't tell that that Zano transaction came from Bridgeless. It could have just been, me sending you some Zano, me sending Daniel some BTCX looks exactly the same as Bridgeless going and sending BTCX to somebody. So you really, it's very obfuscated. And from the viewpoint of can Chainalysis go and look into the Zano network and try to figure things out, insanely difficult to the same degree that it's insanely difficult to do that with Monero.
Okay.
Right, so it has Monero level privacy. And so just like Monero hasn't been in any way, shape, and form remotely de-anonymized, especially after about 2018. 2018 is when Monero introduced confidential transactions and bullet proofs. It introduced also a larger ring size, the ring size being how many other people's transactions get mixed in with yours when you make one. After that, there, to my knowledge, has not been any successful de-anonymization of Monero. And so prior to that, ring size was like 2 to 4. Yes, there was some ability to look at the network graph and say, oh, this person actually sent money to this address, right, by looking at the network graph. Maybe I don't know the amounts.
Degree of confidence.
Correct. But now I have not heard of anyone being able to de-anonymize Monero, even though they're still working on improving it. Same thing applies to Zano because it uses the same technology. So yeah, to answer your question, Tatiana, all you can see is the Bitcoin side going into Bridgeless, and also when Bitcoin comes out of Bridgeless, but you can't see where BTCX goes from within the Zano network.
And she had a follow-up question, and she's asking, when you send it, do you send it to a brand new address, or if you want to sell? I think she's talking about unwrapping, essentially.
Yeah, when you unwrap or when you want to bridge out of BTCX into Bitcoin, you can bridge out into any other address. You don't have to bridge out into the same address you bridged into.
I think she wants, would it be more anon or safer to pick a new address?
Oh, absolutely. It would be generally safer to do that. And know as well, if you're using Edge to do it, we will always pick a new address. All right. Now, granted, it'll be a fresh address. However, if it's in the same wallet, there's always a chance that both of the addresses will get combined in a transaction. So if I have address 1, 2, 3, and 4, right, and someone sends me money into address 1, right, so I've got a Bitcoin in address 1, and then I send half a Bitcoin over the bridge, right, and now I've got half a BTCX. Say I bridge that back, and that goes into address 2. So now I have half a Bitcoin in address 1, half a Bitcoin in address 2. If I go to send a Bitcoin to someone else, then it's going to merge those two addresses. It's going to combine the inputs. And while that doesn't definitively say that those two addresses are from the same person, that's 99% of the time true, right? The source addresses of a transaction are typically the same person. So if you wanted a higher level of anonymity and to ensure that those addresses never get mixed together, then I would create a new Bitcoin wallet in Edge. So in Edge, you can have multiple Bitcoin wallets. It's another benefit to our architecture is you can have multiple, you don't have to back up new private keys. So you can have, instead of address 1, address 2, you can have Bitcoin wallet 1, which can have 100 addresses, and Bitcoin wallet 2, and then bridge in from Bitcoin wallet 1 into Zano, BTCX, and then bridge out into Bitcoin wallet 2. And Bitcoin wallet 1 and 2 will never get combined. Like, we'll never merge those two addresses. They are treated fully independent at all times.
This is actually one of my favorite features of Edge is just the independent wallets, multi-chain wallets inside of one account that's not tracking me. It gives me a lot of freedom.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Having multiple wallets of the same asset is one of the biggest features we have, but also one of the biggest pain points in our entire UX design. And I know you laugh right now because we both have gone through the, oh gosh, where do we explain to users which wallet they're on, this token that they have on ETH, which ETH wallet that's from, because it all kind of shows up in the same master list, and we've had a few proposals to streamline and improve that. at least we have wallet names which are user editable, and the wallet names allow you to differentiate between all of them, but you have to actually go and use them yourself. So it is a bit of a UX challenge, but at the same time, it is a powerful feature.
Yeah.
And if you do like having multiple of the same asset, then it's hard to find that in most any other product.
Yeah, and the more you play with it, the more intuitive it becomes, and all of a sudden I'm mastering multiple wallets all within one account.
Exactly, and you realize like the search feature helps you find certain wallets and tokens.
Right.
Maybe I have 2 ETH wallets, and each of them might have a dozen tokens in it, and that can look confusing in the app, and so I'll just make sure each of them have a different name. My ETH wallet might have one name, and the second one will have a different one, and I can search for those names, and then all the tokens show up for each one of those ETH wallets, all right? And so that's a way that you can kind of filter. But yeah, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's a relevant tangent, right? Having multiple wallets improves privacy. You can have more than one Zano wallet, you can have more than one Bitcoin wallet, and then the UX is really naming them independently to know which one's which.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool.
We have another question from Busy Mountain.
All right, Busy Mountain, what you got?
Have you considered adopting the Digibyte or DGB Digibyte wallet with DigiDollar minting and vaulting, like a one-stop shop?
I've only recently come across the DigiDollar, which by its own name I'm going to presume is a stablecoin. So while we have supported Digibyte for quite some time, haven't considered adding the DigiDollar. Generally speaking, tokens on UTXO networks are notably more challenging. And we don't gain a whole lot of usability in that dollar because it's not widely adopted for one of the biggest use cases for stablecoins is DeFi.
Right.
Like, I don't want to hold a dollar personally. I don't like holding dollar value, period. But I'll owe dollars happily. I love owing things that go down in value, and I like holding things that go up in value.
Hashtag inflation.
Right? Exactly. So with DigiDollar, really what you get is a great payment method for people that want to pay in dollars and receive dollars. But that's competing heads up against a lot of other dollar-based payment methods, TradFi and whatnot. And really, I think, while we see stablecoins, just a plethora of them, I don't actually think that payments is a great use case for them, because privacy is so poor. Right? That's one thing. And Digibyte isn't a privacy chain, so you kind of get the same privacy you would with Bitcoin.
Right.
And with Digibyte, you don't have the smart contracts that give you the DeFi that really lends well to the dollar, like being able to trade. Say you're just a trader.
Yeah.
You don't want to trade on FTX, right? At this point, who wants to trade on FTX, or who could? But you can trade back and forth between, a tokenized Bitcoin and a tokenized dollar on a smart contract chain like Solana.
Right.
And that isn't as well enabled with a stablecoin on a Digibyte. Even so, many people don't even realize this, but Tether exists on Bitcoin, right? And it was first launched on Bitcoin, hardly ever used for payments. Like individuals, we never paid Tether. Almost no wallet supported it. It was a back-end technology that allowed centralized exchanges to settle between each other very quickly. Right, and it allowed for people to arbitrage between centralized exchanges. So they would say, well, I've got 2 exchange accounts, the price of Bitcoin's higher here than it is on another place. Well, I'm going to buy some where the price is low, send it over to another exchange where the price is high, sell it for Tether, and then transfer the Tether between the exchanges to arbitrage. And so that was kind of like almost like a B2B institutional use case for Tether. And that was it. That really was its adoption. Until Tether got minted on Ethereum. Once it got minted on Ethereum, now we could actually use DEXs to trade back and forth between a dollar-based coin and Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then DeFi came out. We could borrow and lend against it, earn yield. Therein lies some great adoption, but just as a stablecoin on a UTXO non-private chain, it's really hard to convince at least me, maybe a few others, of that value proposition. It's an interesting product, although I don't understand how it works. That's the thing I'm still a little bit new to, is how the coin is stabilized on a UTXO chain, because to my understanding, DigiDollar is not backed by dollars in a bank the way Tether is. So it has to have some kind of an algorithm to do so, which is much harder to do. You have some smart contracts on UTXO chains, but those contracts are far more limited than what you could do on Solana and Ethereum.
Right, right. And even Ethereum, you have staking and restaking, and there's just so many ways to make your money go to work for you. And I guess if you have stagnant dollars, stable coins on a UTXO chain, it's not serving me.
Yeah, it's not. Like, what exactly are you going to do with it? So
Right.
it's an interesting technical product, and I'm going to be the first to admit my own ignorance. And so I do have limited knowledge of the programmability of UTXO chains, covenants and whatnot that chains similar to Bitcoin have implemented, such as Digibyte. But it is notably more complex to do so, and especially to create a stable, a stable coin, a dollar-based coin, than just putting money in the bank. Although I don't like the idea that it's backed by a central party, but that is at least conceptually simple.
Right, and I can earn a quick little bit of 1%, 2% or whatever.
Yep, exactly. So long-winded answer to have we considered it. It came across my radar maybe a month or two ago, but hasn't been one that we've really put on the roadmap.
I hadn't heard of it, so I'll check it out.
He has a follow-up question, kind of unrelated to our topic, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to build your own crypto treasury? It's kind of an interesting question.
We are a crypto treasury company. There's nothing for us to build. Yeah, we hold crypto already. We hold ETH. We stake ETH. We're holding Bitcoin. Hell yeah. We pay everybody in crypto, so we have almost nothing in the bank. Right? The only thing we have in the bank account is because we have to pay rent. We've got to pay a few credit card bills. But almost all our revenue is 95, 98% of our revenue is all in crypto, and so we just hold it as it comes in, pay all whatever bills we can in crypto. So that kind of naturally turns us into a treasury company that, our treasury is crypto for sure. So there's nothing for us to build. We're already there. We were there since 2014. Take that, Michael Saylor. We've been there, since day one.
Kind of bring it back to the non-conversation. Roaring Alpaca wants to know is it true there's differences between Monero, Zcash as far as how anonymous they are. Some are more anonymous than others, or is that just like maxi talk?
They are different. There's probably two primary camps of anon technology, like privacy coin technology, with a few others. The two primary ones that have been utilized by a lot of chains are kind of the Monero technology and the Zcash technology. So Zcash is used by Pirate Chain and a few others, and then Monero is used by Zano and a few others.
Okay.
And it's pretty well accepted that the technology behind Zcash is more private, more anonymous, right? And that's the zero knowledge proofs. In a way, the best analogy is that Zcash makes it where everybody that's using the network is the anonymity set when you send a transaction. So when you send a transaction, we're like, well, who is this going to? When you look at the chain, it looks like it could possibly be going to anyone on the network.
Wow.
Who's it coming from? It looks like it could be coming from literally anybody on the network, right? That's kind of how Zcash looks on the outside when looking in. Obviously, there's literally one address on Zcash and it sends to one other one. Well, it's kind of lost that anonymity, but that's not. But the fact is, there's thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of addresses in Zcash.
I see.
Monero's model, which has been sufficiently strong enough, but clearly not as strong, is to, at least from a sender's point of view, to mix your transaction with 12 to 16 other transactions so that the sender looks like it could be one of 16, but you don't know which 16 that is.
And that's that ring signature?
That's the ring signature, right? 12 to 16, I can't remember, so don't hold me to that exact number, but it's grown over time, where it started off very small, maybe as low as 2 or 4, going 8, 12, and I think maybe as high as 16. Once again, don't hold me to that number. Maybe you can look it up and fact check me there. I know it was at least 12. And so, is 12 as good as obviously thousands? Well, clearly no. Is it good enough? That really is the big question. Is it good enough? Because every transaction mixes with another 12 and another 12, and you make another transaction with another 12. And the more money hops between one to another, the harder and harder and harder it gets to really know its source. And so, yes, it's less private. Real question is it private enough? And at the current ring size, there hasn't been any reports that I'm aware of, and someone please send me a link, a report if you see one. There hasn't been any reports of being able to successfully de-anonymize Monero. And so that's where we're at with at least the state of those two technologies. Now there are a few there's at least one other technology that is, I won't call it widely adopted, but it is in use, which is Mimblewimble.
Oh.
And I'll be the first, I'll admit when I'm ignorant, I don't fully understand how Mimblewimble compares to Monero and Zcash.
And that's Litecoin.
Litecoin uses Mimblewimble MWeb, so
Okay.
it uses that. Yeah, I don't even want to speak to where it sits relative to Zcash and Monero. I initially thought that it was above Monero, maybe below Zcash, but I could be wrong even in that regard. So research Mimblewimble yourself if you're interested in that. I know it is still pretty strong privacy and also hasn't been de-anonymized, so it's been like the good enough, but I don't know where it sits relative, and I don't know where its weaknesses are. I can't describe them to the degree that I can describe the Zcash versus Monero.
Gotcha.
Yep. Cool. All right, all the questions?
Nice. All right.
All right, but great questions. Those are valid things to ask. They're questions that a lot of people that are very strong on privacy continually ask, and a lot of the privacy maxis always want like the best of privacy, and so even if there's a little kink, they want to work on improving it, which is great. That's great. Hopefully they improve it in such a way that the user experience is still kind of usable. And one thing about what I call the Zcash technology and zero knowledge proofs, the big criticism of Zcash is it's optional. Right. And that optional privacy makes it where a good number of Zcash transactions aren't using the privacy layer. Right. They're using transparent transactions to and from transparent addresses, and that reduces the privacy for the average person that happens to have Zcash.
But that might accelerate adoption.
Maybe. It accelerates adoption of the token, of the asset of Zcash. It doesn't accelerate adoption of privacy.
Got it.
And so like the two are very different things. And the Zcash community has gotten criticism for putting more effort in driving adoption of the token and its price versus privacy.
Privacy tech.
I know it's been, there's a little, I won't call it a civil war, but definitely a battle internally within the Zcash community on whether or not they should rip out transparent transactions. And I'm all for it. Rip them out. And I think a few. PirateChain never had them, right? They launched with only full private transactions. But within Zcash, they could rip out the transparent transactions. It would be quite a burden to the users that are holding money in transparent funds. I mean, they could also rip it out such that you can only make transparent transactions to private addresses. Like that could be a potential change where anything that's transparent stays transparent, but you can never transfer it to another transparent address. You now, from then on out, have to migrate to privacy. That would be the equivalent to me of killing transparency, right?
Okay.
So there's a bit of a battle going on in there, but the people that want the privacy, like their reasoning is, oh, but how are we're gonna lose support for the exchanges, right? That's a number go up thing. It's like, okay, so what if you do, right? The coin is still the coin, you can still transact it, you can still send it, you can send it privately. By kind of bowing down to like exchange support, that is really, as opposed to the utility and the privacy of the coin, it definitely gives that impression of like, oh, well, we want number go up, right? Because when you get an exchange listing, that's what every coin wants. Ooh, exciting new exchange listing, price bumps. Exciting new exchange listing, price bumps. In contrast with Monero, it's like, oh, okay, so we got delisted. All right, well, guess what? We're still alive.
Cool.
Got delisted. We're still alive. People are still using it. And that kind of personality really resonates with the people that care about using the crypto, using it privately. It's that honey badger don't care, kind of ethos. So.
Yeah, also, well, no matter where you're at on that spectrum, I would say one of the big takeaways from this is to try playing with some privacy coins and see if you can become a participant, even if you don't necessarily fully viscerally get why it's important or why it might be important. You're helping to improve make money great again.
Yeah, give it a try. Try to actually spend it, use it. I discovered some amazing tallow fried chips here locally in San Diego on XMR Bazaar. Give it a try. Go to XMR Bazaar and go see if there's something that you would normally buy anyway. Like, don't just go buy stuff because it's like, oh, because it's got Monero stuff you'd normally buy. As well, there's Monerico, I think. I'm totally botching that, but there's a website that shows a whole bunch of services, including wallets and exchanges, that support Monero. And so, you can actually go and buy stuff with it.
And Porkfest, they heard about Zano's on. They made like
Zano's on, that's right, Amazon and Zano. So therefore, yeah, you can go. Actually, the Zano community has been really good about trying to push adoption to be able to use Zano. And so that's where I'm like, it skips my mind, maybe because it either doesn't exist or hasn't been promoted very well, but Zcash needs something similar, where I can natively use Zcash. I know Spendin, has been promoted within the Zcash community, although that's more of like a conversion to fiat, and really you're paying with fiat at the end of the day.
Right.
I love seeing like native adoption where the person I'm sending my money to is actually receiving the crypto. And so if anyone out there knows of some equivalent like merchant directory for Zcash, I'd love to hear it. I know there's definitely some services, but I just hasn't crossed my path to see a well baked out directory listing. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent.
Other questions or wrap up time?
Thanks. Good
Cool.
to go.
All right, for everyone who fired off questions, super appreciate it. Catch us maybe in about a couple of weeks. What do you do, every couple of weeks or a month?
Yeah, and if you're watching the replay and you have follow-up questions, ping us at support@edge.app. I'd love to have any questions or just any perspectives you have about privacy. Happy to hear your feedback.
Okay, cool. All right.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care.